Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodhanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yasodhanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe. Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ke Jai Vishpad Paramhamsa Prabhajakacharya Sottara Satashi Srimade Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON founder Charya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Said Goswami Prabhugan ki. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhani ke. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ke. Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ke. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nivishesha Sunyali Paschadishatane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're getting to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 29th chapter, talks between Narada Muni and King Pachinibarhi, text number 83. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Gitam devarshinanaga. Gitam devarshinanaga. Ya shravayed. Ya shrinyat. Ya shravayed. Ya shrinyat. Sa lingena vimuchyate. Sa lingena vimuchyate. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Gitam devarshinanaga. Yashravayed yashrunuyat. Salingena vimuchyate. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Gitam devarshinanaga. Yashravayed yashrunuyat. Salingena vimuchyate. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Darshananaga. Yashravayed yashrunuyat. Tadidhatma paroksham. Gitam devarshananaga. Yashravayed yashrunuyat. Salingena vimuchyate. Etad adhyatma paroksham. Gitam devarshananaga. Yashravayed yashrunuyat. Salingena vimuchyate. Etat, this, adhyatma, spiritual, paroksham, authorized description, Gitam, narrated, Devarishina, by the great sage Narada, Anaga, O spotless Vidura, Ya, anyone who, Shravayet, may describe, Ya, anyone who, Shrunuyat, may hear, Saha, he, Lingena, from the bodily concept of life, Vimuchyate, becomes delivered. My dear Vidura, so this would be Maitreya speaking now. My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence, as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. Haribo. My dear Vidura, please repeat. My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence, as described by the great sage Narada, who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This material creation is the spirit soul's dream. Actually, all existence in the material world is a dream of Mahavishnu, as the Brahma Samhita describes. Yakarna narnava jale bhajati sma yoga nidram anantam jagadanda saroma kupaha. This material world is created by the dreaming of Mahavishnu. The real factual platform is the spiritual world. But when the spirit soul wants to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's put into this dreamland of material creation. After being in contact with the material modes of nature, the living entity develops the subtle and gross bodies. When the living entity is fortunate enough to associate with Sri Narada Mahamuni or his servants, he's liberated from the dreamland of material creation and the bodily conception of life. Could we pray? Omigana Timarandasya Ginanjana Salakya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sayitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakopatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'm reminded of that childish little ditty. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Barely, how's it go? Verily, 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 life is but a dream. Who would have thunk that that was an absolute sutra describing the material existence of the conditioned living entity? Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes how in the beginning of life it's not so bad. Everybody's there to tickle you and goo-goo gaga you and attend to your every, what do you want? And it continues on as you play, learn to walk and begin to do all these little cute things. Starts to slow down a little bit in the sense that the dream starts stretching a little when you got to go to school. I remember going to first grade and I didn't want to go. I was frightened. I don't want to leave home. I like the way life is. But you have to. Time doesn't stop for any of us. Then you start engaging in the academics, and if you have some inclination, you might see some pleasure in that, and you have more friends, and you try to see the good in it, but more and more pricks are experienced. Because reciprocations between the conditioned souls in this material world is anything but loving. There's a foundation of envy based between basically every living entity and another. Even when there is love for someone, there's a vicarious desire that I'm going to enjoy through that person. They're going to appreciate me. Selfishness is the underlying theme. But in the reality, love truly exists, and it's selfless. This is the kind of verse we like to hear. We all like to hear the benedictions. Wow, who doesn't want to become realized in the spiritual identity? Who doesn't want to truly become free from the bodily concept of life? Sadhana Bhakti is so wonderful because we get glimpses of it. When the kirtans are so absorbing, or somehow or other we have some taste for hearing Shastra, or associating with devotees, we can forget the pains and pleasures. There used to be one famous announcer for Wrigley's Field in Chicago, and he'd say, "Come to the ballpark and forget all your pains and woes of the day." And of course, people are trying to do that in temporarily, little spurts. But in devotional service, she gets the little spurts and then increases. And thus it inspires us that this is what I want. Like last night, we got to absorb ourselves in the description and thoughts of Srivas Pandit and Lord Chaitanya and his associates. And then we had some kirtan, and Krishna consciousness is so nice. And then when it's all over and the curtains close, then all of a sudden these bodily, hey, I'm miserable. My knees were aching, my feet and ankles were aching, and I'm going, my gosh, I haven't felt this kind of ache. Have I ever felt like this, where they all were just at once jumping on me? And of course, for a devotee, then he tries to at least intellectually understand, thank you, Krishna. This body that under the illusion of youth, or even for some time into manhood when you really had your energy, looking back upon it, you kind of thought, life is good. A devotee following the principles of Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna, can live basically the life of a demigod. You can get by with the least amount of pain in this material world, and that is one of the downsides of the mode of goodness, that you become comfortable. We become cheated. Indians giving away the land for what? A few beads or blankets. Priceless asset. Their sustenance, their maintenance, the instrumentality, the grace of God. And they give it away because they want a few trinkets, absorbed, attracted to, bewildered by. And that's what we do. We've given away our birthright. But Krishna consciousness is so nice. By simply hearing, how potent is devotional service, that simply by listening attentively to the sound vibration of the glorifications of the names of Krishna, the glorifications of his form, his qualities, his activities, his devotees, just by that one activity, one can become perfect in life. Just here. Of course, it doesn't stop there because it's contagious and it spreads. You become enlivened. You become excited. When you get this nectar, you want to share it with others. You can't keep it to yourself. It said one who acquires transcendental knowledge and doesn't share it with others, that transcendental knowledge is like a fire that is kept within a clay pot with a lid on it. It's not going to last very long. If you don't use it, you lose it. Now this verse, this blessing that is being spoken of by Maitreya Muni, he's really talking about Diksa. What is Diksa? We often think, it's where I get a spiritual master, I get a new name, I get to Sit at a fire sacrifice, offer oblations into it, etc. But Diksha is the process by which one can awaken his transcendental knowledge. This mentioning of self-awareness and freedom of the bodily concept of life, this is transcendental knowledge. And by awakening such transcendental knowledge, one vanquishes all reactions caused by sinful activity. A person expert in the study of the revealed scriptures knows this process to be Diksha. Diksha is so important. It has to take place in the life, in the heart of a devotee. It's not superficial. It's not the externals. It's like Srila Prabhupada saying, the very first moment, the very first time he met his spiritual master, and his spiritual master defeated his concepts of what would be best for everybody in India. When his spiritual master shattered his limited conceptions of help of others to others, not just people of India, but throughout the entire world. And of course, Krishna consciousness isn't simply limited to the human beings. It's all inclusive. It's meant for all living entities, all parts and parcels of Krishna. That's the desire of one who has Sambandha Gyan and has built upon it in Abhideya, that he serves the Lord. So to begin with, when one recognizes, as it was mentioned in Maharaja's verse and purport, one's transcendental equality with the Lord, you realize your eternality. At that point, if you get the association of a devotee, then you can understand how the names of Krishna are Krishna. They are non-different. The deity of Krishna is Krishna. Neither the name nor the form are representations of Krishna. They are Krishna. And if one has spiritualized their senses, spiritualized means for devotees, the quickest and easiest process is the chanting of Hare Krishna, sadhana bhakti. Getting the knowledge from a Vaishnava, authorized knowledge, as it says here, paroksha. It's authorized. Prahlad Maharaj said the same thing. If you simply accept, my dear classmates, if you simply accept what I'm sharing with you, because it's authorized, it's the message given to me by my spiritual master, simply accept it and your life can become perfect. So the acceptance, that's called Shraddha. I touched on this in a previous verse, previous class. This strong faith, determined faith, ever-increasing faith. This allows the transcendental knowledge that has been given to us by gurus, by sadhus, to blossom, to open up. Diksha is sometimes referred to as a key. Those who are not in Krishna consciousness but talk about esoterical practices of this or that, they will talk about the need for initiation, because the initiation, the secret, can be unlocked. And that's a fact. That's the way it works. Without receiving bhakti from one who possesses bhakti, we're such a tiny, insignificant living entity. The amount, the potency of our own bhakti in and of itself, wandering in this dreamlike material existence, is not manifest. You have to get the mercy. And that mercy means the transcendental knowledge. The description of Vasudeva and Devaki is given as initiation or diksha. Krishna appeared within the heart. Sometimes synonymously it's stated in the mind of Vasudeva. And it's not like the verse we quote, what is that? One should meditate upon the form of the Lord within the heart. Dhyana, what is it? Dhyana vastitahi. It's not like that. When one has Krishna within the heart, one realizes Krishna in the heart, it's not like trying to capture, trying to meditate, trying to focus increasingly on Krishna. No, Krishna is revealing himself. He revealed himself to Vasudeva. This is truly who can represent Krishna. We have the verse by Lord Chaitanya. Was it Kiba Nasi? I always foul up when it comes. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nasi Shudra Kena Hoy. Say Krishna Veti Tat. What say Krishna Tattva Veti. Say Guru Hoy. That one who has Krishna, it doesn't matter whether he's sannyasi, grahasta, this or that. The externals don't matter. He can be born in a family of flesh eaters. There's no disqualification. The externals have no bearing, because when one has received Diksha, transcendental knowledge, the Lord within the heart, then all contamination is destroyed. Subtle and gross bodies, their influence upon the consciousness, finished. That person can give what he has, and that's what Vasudeva did. He gave Krishna to his wife, Devaki. The Lord was transferred from Vasudeva's heart to Devaki's heart. I think it was Vairagava Acharya who said, this is the true understanding of a heart-to-heart relationship. When the devotees relate on the spiritual platform, not simply the externals. The obeisances, the hugs, the friendships, they're wonderful. They're all building towards coming to the spiritual level of reciprocation in spiritual Krishna consciousness. But these are the activities you see, hear, and remember from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, Lord Chaitanya and his associates. They show us what love is. They show us what friendship and true relationships, heart-to-heart relationships are. It's all based on this transcendental knowledge. What's that verse? I or he is knowledge. He's the object. He's the perfection of knowledge in Bhagavad Gita. The 15th chapter, second half of a verse says, that wasn't the one I was thinking of, but it'll work. Describing the super. So it says he's knowledge, he's the object of knowledge, he's the perfection of knowledge. So there's Krishna, and as Vijay Prabhu mentioned the other day, from him, from his breathing, it is his very essence, transcendental knowledge comes. So one who is so fortunate to be in contact with the disciplic succession and receiving this gift, untainted by the modes, untainted by exterior motivations, he can achieve perfection in life. And one who wants to be the middleman, who wants to serve in the capacity of offering this transcendental knowledge to others, he has to very much be aware of his consciousness when doing so. If we think we're the doer, you'll get some words, you might get some emotional titillation, you might get some intellectual stimulation, but you won't be given transcendental sound vibration that can change the heart, that can melt the heart, that can transform a fool thinking that they're the material body and mind into a servant of Krishna. If the senses are not service inclined, if they've not been purified by the process of bhakti, then they can't be the medium for transcendental sound vibration. The Lord will not appear on such a tongue or in the ears of such a person. There's benefit, no doubt. It adds to the bank account so that gradually accumulating at some point, got it. And it never increases, it never decreases. But if we want to be a servant of the message of the Lord, there's no greater service, there's no greater reward than being given such service. Then we can't think ourselves the doer or responsible for enacting change in others' lives. We're not. We're just, like the spiritual masters described, at best we can be a transparent via medium. Get the filters out of the way. Get the material desires out of the way. One who is a sycophant. Fancy word. What does sycophant mean, Dravida?
Sycophant means one who is hanging on sponge.
He wants recognition. He wants to be, look it up exactly, but a bootlicker?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a cool synonym. I didn't have enough time to look up the word.
A person who praises powerful people in order to get their approval.
Okay, a sycophant has no chance of being a servant of the message of the Lord.
No, a servile, self-seeking flatterer. Very concise. Self-seeking.
Yeah, it's about me. I want the praise. I want the adoration. I want the recognition and all the other perks that come with it. That goes on a lot. How can it not if one is still affected by the conditioned nature of thinking I'm this body, that I'm the doer? Intellectually, I understand. But we have to pray for the humility and the self-introspection to realize I'm anything but a devotee of the Lord. I have so far to go. When these verses come up where we hear benedictions, we're so happy to hear them, and we readily hold stock in them, put stock in them, and pray for their fructification. But when one is praying personally to the Lord, we've heard it said that first step, glorify the Lord. Sing His praises or the praises of the spiritual master or the devotees to the best of your ability. And then, you don't just jump right to, can you bless me in this way? No, then you describe your own disqualifications. How you are in such wretched need of the mercy of the devotees, of the spiritual master and the Lord. If one can understand that he has no shelter but the mercy of the Lord and His devotees, then he is a perfect candidate for receiving that mercy, realizing that mercy. I love this one verse in the Jagatnathastikam. Alas, this is certain, that Lord Jagannath bestows His lotus feet upon those who feel themselves fallen and have no shelter in this world but Him. May that Jagannath Swami be the object of my vision. Vaishika Prabhu shared that one-liner he got from Savas. Such a priceless one-liner. Well worth meditating on. How you doing? Hanging on by a thread. And the thread of the devotee of one spiritual master is the most resilient and powerful item that one could hang on to. But on my own, I have no shelter. Who can I turn to? Everybody else has let me down. Oh, the times are going to get better. In this 67 years, whatever, and that I've experienced this body, it's not getting any better materially. It's getting worse by the day. I would have never dreamed in my wildest dreams that we would be in the nightmare. Calling it a dream is too much credit. I would have never dreamed we could be in the nightmare of the consciousness of people at this time in Kali Yuga. Yeah, you hear in Scripture it's bad. But how bad? It can get very, very bad. But Krishna consciousness breaks our attachment and our connection to any and all of it. Real Krishna consciousness. Sambandha Gyan. Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is everything. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is meant to be used in Krishna's service. And of course that includes tiny, little, insignificant me. So when you have that understanding, then you're not jockeying to be first. You're not jockeying to be recognized. You're just asking to be allowed to render some service to inspire others, to engage in service for self-purification, begging that it might be accepted despite its disqualification, lack of qualification. So this is what we strive for in Krishna consciousness, that we can embrace these things. If the desire is there and we stay focused in the desire, then bhakti, the experience of sadhana bhakti, it's like waves. Sometimes you'll feel ecstatic, sometimes you'll feel crestfallen, overwhelmed with your disqualification. Sometimes you're just steady and trying to, be focused on the here and now, and it's about serving Guru, Vaishnavas, and Krishna. But whatever it may be, if we stay focused in the process, Sambandha Abhideya, then in time, at the discretion of the spiritual master and the Lord, then we will receive the highest gift. If we want it, we will receive it. They are so anxious to give it to us all. This ability to realize I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, this is just the chump change of Krishna consciousness. It's the beginning, and here I am after so many years still begging for that change. Evidently not really begging for it. Evidently something else has to be replacing or being desired instead of that, or it would be mine. Material desires can be so subtle. Maya's not, she's not inept. She's expert. Far more empowered than we are in our conditioned consciousness. We can be convinced that the weeds of material influence, of conditioning and desire, are the bhakti lata, the devotional creeper. And that's why we need to stay in the association of devotees, so that they can point out, as uncomfortable as it might be, they can point out, that's a weed. That's not bhakti. We have to continually read Srila Prabhupada's books. Hear is the proper term, really. Because when you read, you're meant to be present, knowing this is transcendental sound vibration. It's not just an exercise of the eyes on the words, the print of the pages, or on the tablet. But it's transcendental knowledge. And if we follow this process, then the conditioning will become cleansed, and we will progress increasingly in our path back to full awareness of Krishna and our devotional service to Him. So I think I will uncharacteristically stop now. Shows you probably think I should prepare less for other classes also. But are there any questions, contributions?
Prabhu, could you say more? I still don't have a good grasp on. I still don't have a good grasp on the aspect that the statement that if you are not feeling happy in Krishna consciousness, you aren't performing devotional service correctly. But there's the aspect that one will experience different
ways.
Feelings. You were saying you're crestfallen by my lowly condition. Could you just elaborate a little more on that? Because I have never really had a great grasp on those points.
Thank you for the wonderful question. We're conditioned by the desire for sense gratification, so we think that happiness is when the Ferris wheel's at the top. Or, you're on those, what do they call those rides at those parks, you put your arms up and you get to yell out, I'm not afraid. Your adrenaline is pumping, and people think that this is what happiness is. It's not. It's an intoxicated, feverish mentality. Happiness in Krishna consciousness is based, let's use terminology that is common in this world. It is sober, it is peaceful, it is steady. The eternal platform of Krishna consciousness, eternality, the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness, that's what we want. And from there, Krishna can play with us as he wants. When you are in the groove, meaning you are desiring to please Guru and Krishna, that you are desiring to improve in your offering of yourself and your activities in service to Guru and Krishna. Actually, that feeling of being disqualified far, far outweighs, is more rewarding than that top of the exciting ride, because you're feeling the reciprocation of the mercy of Guru and Krishna. When we get a glimpse of some emotionality in Krishna consciousness, we should see, it stops at a certain point. Whenever you stop to analyze it, even when it takes place, if you stop to think, what's taking place, then you can lose it just like that. Because in the experience of emotional, loving service to the Lord, it's about the service and the Lord. Selflessly offered, not about me. But when I put myself into it, what am I feeling? Then it puts the brakes on. It breaks it. If it's overwhelming, then you might be fortunate that you can jump out of that real quick when you realize what your mind is doing. But this Krishna consciousness, when you're receiving the mercy of the Lord, when you're following the instructions of the spiritual master, then know that to be far more rewarding and valuable, and that which we seek, that which we pray for, than anything else. Does that make some contrast between the high and then what someone might think is low? Why are you sad? How can I not be sad? I'm an idiot. What have I done for Prabhupada? Or why are you emotional? Well, I'm so grateful. How can I not be grateful? The names of Krishna. I'm here in a kirtan with the assembly of devotees in front of the Lord. When the Lord lets you just get that little glimpse, that little taste, which will increase and increase, we're so very fortunate. And it comes when we get out of the way and just surrender body, mind, and words in the service of Guru and Vaishnavas. That's the That's the process. So those are my thoughts on the matter. Would you like to contribute, Dravida, Vijay?
The Chaitanya Charitamrita and how wonderful it is and perfect, and the aesthetics and the glory of just the
Loving relationships.
Yeah, but you said I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Maharaj's talk this morning, how he was somebody appreciated the CC. It was a Bengali gentleman, and he was just appreciating the glories of the poetry in it, like that.
Okay.
But what I was thinking of when you quoted that verse, defining Diksa, Divyam Jnanam Yato Dadyat. This is the one, and it's from the Bhakti Sandarbha. This is what Diksha is. Diksha is the process by which one can awaken his transcendental knowledge. That's what you're talking about. And vanquish all reactions caused by sinful activity. What I don't have, there's no time here, this is a whole other class. There's a section of the 15th chapter of the Madhya Lila, where Lord Chaitanya is answering a question from Satyaraj Khan. This is text 105 of the 15th chapter. How can I recognize a Vaishnav? Yeah. Please let me know what a Vaishnav is. And this is the first time Lord Chaitanya answers. What are his common symptoms? Lord Chaitanya, whoever chants the holy name of Krishna just once is worshipable and is the topmost human being. And then Lord Chaitanya, simply by chanting the holy name once, a person is relieved of all reactions. It goes on like that. Wonderful purports. And then we get to text 108, and you'll find in the CC they're often that 108th verse in the chapter is very significant. Krishna, Jiva Krishna Hoy, Jiva Soroboy Krishna is the 108th verse, and mind you, 20 like that. There's another couple like that. So this is one of them. And here, this is like about initiation. One does not have to undergo initiation or execute the activities required before initiation. One simply has to vibrate the holy name with his lips. Thus even a man in the lowest class, Chandala, can be delivered. And then in purport, Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami first defining what initiation is. And we get down, okay, well, where's initiation come in? And then you have a long quote from the Bhakti Sandarbha, which I just have to relate this. Bhakti Sandarbha 283. And the big Sanskrit, and in the course of this marathon that took place in 75, they didn't have time to translate that. Prabhupada wouldn't give translations on these things. But this resolution to the whole puzzle is, well, what do I need initiation for? And that is that Jiva Goswami is explaining that although the holy name is everything, if you take the holy name and you worship purely, it, and you simply see that as non-different from Krishna, you can go all the way back to God just by the holy name. But here he's saying that, and I'll just read this one passage here, because it refers to Narada Muni also, which is what we're studying. So it all when they talk about initiation, it's talking basically about getting initiated to worship the deity. And so he quotes here, the first part of the quote, it is the Srimad Bhagavatam's opinion that the process of deity worship is not actually necessary, just as the specific prescriptions of the Pancharatra, other descriptions do not have to be followed. Just chant the holy name, purely. Then you get to the second part, and it just struck me home when I read this and first said, well, it's talking about people 500 years ago, but this pertains even more today. Although deity worship is not essential, the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires that they engage in this activity. When we consider their bodily and mental conditions, we find that the character of such candidates is impure and their minds are agitated. Therefore, to rectify this material conditioning, the great sage Narada and others have at different times recommended various kinds of regulations for deity worship. And therefore, then Diksha is necessary to perform. And just one more comment, I don't want to go on. But I'm reading that book by Giriraj Swami. And the amazing relationship that devotees had with the deities there. I don't know if you visited at that time. The deities, they said devotees were undergoing such great austerities just to establish that and live in that land, and mosquitoes and rats and everything. They were all getting sick. But then later on, I think it was Giriraj Swami said, the deities were undergoing great austerities to protect the devotees. They were also, how to worship them, and the things were blowing down. And possible. So, and Prabhupada was emphasizing how important it was to worship those deities nicely, and this would attract all the Indians to come and would be able to develop that program. So the whole program Prabhupada gave us works together with the deity worship. And some of us say, oh yeah, deity worship means getting on the altar. No. When we come to the temple and we're greeting the deities, being there on time, keeping the temple clean, that is our deity worship. And that's the purification, is essential for chanting Hare Krishna purely. It all works together. Anyway, I don't want to go on, but that just broke.
Thank you for sharing.
So as Mukunda's question, it's an interesting thing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, "My greatest happiness is the difficulty I undergo in your service." And there's a picture of Prabhupada. He looks very grave, not very happy. And the way he said, "Prabhupada, you look very unhappy in this picture." No, that was a moment of ecstasy. So one should feel oneself fallen, and it's like Krishnadas Kaviraj felt himself the most fallen, lower than a worm in stool. But he was very happy. He was a great devotee. You can't imagine how happy he was. But he feels himself very fallen. But at the same time, he's very happy. It's an interesting contrast there.
Yeah, we have. It's a little challenging to understand because that's spiritual realization. When you realize your spirit, then that's how you feel. Insignificant, fallen, but of course you're satisfied. You're connected to the Lord. What else is there? Yeah, thank you for that quote. That was so important. Prabhupada never gave up. He never let up. Didn't matter how challenging. In fact, he would become invigorated when the challenges would come. He'd be given the opportunity to serve more, to surrender more, to depend on Krishna more. This is the devotee.
There, undergoing these serious austerities, getting sick, and then eventually they had a fight with the police and everything to establish that, all because of Prabhupada wanted to, he so much wanted this process. They looked back on it and said, even though it was so difficult and we were getting, it was tremendous, it's the happiest time of my life when they were sacrificing so much to make that project go and just to maintain the deities and everything like that. So that's really the paradox. And you mentioned it when you first started taking up book distribution. You took it up because it was so difficult. Because you knew that that's where, you could really get established and get a taste.
I've been to Russia many times, and I've spoken to devotees that went through that very difficult time back in the 70s. And they said that the difficulties that they were undergoing, it just rose their Krishna consciousness to such a high level. And they said, now we're not near as Krishna conscious as we were back then. Yeah, that just to be in that difficulty, just raises their Krishna consciousness. So although they were struggling, some people even died.
That's the externals. Yeah. That a mind would put significance to. Yeah, the more we surrender taking shelter of the Lord, to that degree it'll be the best of times. And in easygoing life and Krishna consciousness do not go well together, because most of the time when devotees are coasting or happy, then they're not doubling down and striving harder.
That's why book distribution is so nice. You got to surrender.
Constant surrender.
Every day. Yeah.
Book distribution key. Balaram, did you want to say something? Here's my imitation of Balaram. You were...
I always yawn like that?
You do.
Oh, really?
Like, all of a sudden you become overcome with some kind of like little sleepy... Go for it.
All right. Yeah, I was thinking, Dravida Prabhu was talking about the Juhu book, and I was thinking, what's that devotee's name? His name's, he's the brother of, what's that devotee's name?
Purusha?
Purusha is, Yogi Purusha. Yeah, he was there, and he was in Juhu, and he wasn't planning on staying, this and that, but he somehow or other he arrived there, and he said he stayed for like 10 years as the head cook. And he's explaining in that book how it was so hot, the summer of Mumbai, and they're living in the tin shed with all the heat from the sun and over the cooking for the deities, and he said it was just like really intense. And he had some mystical experience there, how he was kind of working or serving like that, and then he kind of sat down and he felt this wave of coolness, something, there's no wind or anything, so it was a mystical experience. But yeah, he was also saying how these were the best days of my life, serving like this, Radha Rasa. Yeah, Banabhatta's brother. Yeah.
It's a vacation. Mike.
They were performing. You can imagine his presence as devotee in the
What's that?
where you can do all the puja in your mind,
Yeah.
So Prabhupada, just keep chanting in the jail, So that they said, well, we can have a great Sunday feast. We can have fabulous worship, and they started to do an elaborate worship and dressing the deities in jewels and silks, and everything. Created a tremendous feast. It was all in their mind, They sat down and honored the Messiah. They were going on for days and days
Hare
like
Krishna.
that. There's a lot in that book and in that whole era that just.
I was remiss last night discussing the anniversary of Srivas Pandit's appearance day. It was also the anniversary of the disappearance day of His Holiness Sridhar Swami, who was an integral servant in the development of Juhu over the years. A full-on, the highest compliment, in my opinion, you can give someone, a full-on Prabhupada man. And he exemplifies what we hear in these verses. Giving your life to Guru in the service of others. Selflessness. And, it's nice to remember him. So it was his disappearance anniversary yesterday. I was there in Mayapur when it happened. It was a transcendental experience. Sad, but ecstatic. That's the way it works in Krishna consciousness. Vipralamba appears to be the most miserable experience, but in actuality it's the most blissful. So anyway, just that little footnote, a day late and $1 short, but His Holiness Sridhar Swami ki.
Yeah, with Sridhar Swami, when the thugs were coming there's this whole episode where they're coming and going to break down the temporary temple and all that. So devotees were staying up all night, to come and if these guys were going to come to fight them, because they were claiming, we're going to bring 100 thugs, and Mr. Sethi said, you'll have to bring 102 or something, because I got 102, cartridges, something. There was a whole this thing going on. So then Sridhar Swami was there, and he was in a jeep, he had his weapons and stuff, and then so they asked Sridhar Swami, why are you in that jeep? He said, so I could make a good getaway, He was just joking. He's ready to fight too, but.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki.